Spirit will cease to be never. Never was time it was not. End and beginning are dreams. Birthless and deathless, and changeless remaineth the Spirit forever. Death has not touched it at all, dead though the house of it seems. Again, in the same chapter of the 24th edition, Mrs. Eddy says, the ancient Hindu philosophers understand something of this principle when they said in the song Celestial, according to an old prose translation, the wise neither grieve for the dead nor for the living. I myself never was not, nor thou, nor all the princes of the earth, nor shall we ever hereafter cease. And old age, so in some future frame, will it find the like. One who is confirmed in this belief is not disturbed by anything that may come to pass. The sensibility of the faculties giveth heat and cold, pleasure and pain, which come and go and are transient and inconstant. Bear them with patience, for the wise man whom these disturb not, and to whom pain and pleasure are the same, is formed for immortality.
Yes, so it would probably be reasonable to assume, although I haven't been able to verify this yet, that she was very familiar with Emerson and Thoreau and other intellectuals of the New England area that had been studying some of the Hindu scriptures, since that was her kind of area where she was working. And so in that environment, she would have been very open about these ideas of looking at other faiths and ideas and philosophies and so forth. And then later on, as it points out, some of the later editions, they began to take some of those things out. But it's quite possible that she was very familiar with those ideas, perhaps had discussions with many of those people of the early transcendentalists. All right, let's continue.
This is a quotation from one of the old translations of the Bhagavad Gita by Charles Wilkins, published in London in 1785 and in New York in 1867. In recent editions of Science and Health, this has been omitted, perhaps to show that the founder of Christian Science did not draw the water of truth from any other fountain than the Christian Bible. Now let us compare the leading propositions of Christian Science with those of the Vedanta philosophy. The 193rd edition of Science and Health, these propositions are said to be 4 in number. First, God is all in all. Second, God is good. God is mind. Third, God, spirit, being all nothing is matter. Fourth, life, God, omnipotent. Good, deny death, evil, sin, disease. Disease, sin, evil, death, deny God, omnipotent, good, life. Which of the denials in Proposition 4 is true? Both cannot be true. These 4 propositions form the 4 main pillars upon which rests the structure of Christian Science. A critical student of philosophy, however, can reduce these 4 to 2. First, accept God, who is spirit, mind, life, being, omnipotent, good, and all in all. Second, deny matter and that which exists besides God. According to Christian Science, God, spirit, life, mind, being, omnipotence, infinite good, all these terms are synonymous and are applicable to one real substance of the universe. In the same manner, matter, sin, disease, ignorance, error, and illusion are also synonymous terms which can be applied to that which exists as distinct and separate from the God of Christian Science. It has no existence, no reality. Therefore, the whole phenomenal world with its innumerable appearances does not exist in reality. It is like a mirage, an illusion or dream of the immortal mind, dream of the mortal mind. But the mortal mind itself falls under the head of illusion too, because we read in page 8, 183rd?
183rd edition.
183rd edition of Science and Health. Mortal mind implies something untrue, and therefore unreal. And as the phrase is used in teaching Christian Science, it is meant to designate that which has no real existence.
It's amazing. I wonder how many editions there have been since then. I mean, this was 100 years ago, probably over 100 years. I think she was still alive when he gave this lecture. She died in 1910, I think, or something like that. So she very well may have been still been alive. She lived to be 89. Yeah, she had a very long life, and there was a huge organization and very successful at that time. And there were many incidences of remarkable healings from the people adhering to the ideas of Christian Science. But of course, they were rather strict in their views too. They didn't like people trying anything else or doing Christian Science and, say, standard medicine. So there was somewhat of a rigidity there. But still, the power of prayer and the power of mind over matter was demonstrated over and over again by many of her followers. And even when I was doing their testimony services, there were a few incidents that people would relate to in that respect. All right, let's continue. These are long paragraphs, so we're stopping every once in a while in the middle because they go on forever. Okay.
The world is an illusion that is seen by the illusion of the mortal mind. The question arises, whence comes this illusion? What causes it? Christian Science does not answer. It simply says, mind or God is not the author of matter, and the creator of ideas is not the creator of illusions.
And of course, we also have to remember that she's deliberately trying to relate to a Christian audience and trying to convince them of these ideas in a totally Christian context. So she's going to have to put it in ways that they can understand. She's not talking to philosophy students in a university or people that are interested in Eastern philosophy. So everything she says is put in terms that come from the Bible and are understandable by people from that frame of reference. But Swami Abhedananda is going to point out some of the differences in the way she puts it and the way Vedanta would put it. And it's good for us to hear these things because it shows us a little bit more of the nuances of Vedanta that we might ourselves miss if we weren't comparing it and contrasting it with the way other people put it. All right, let's continue.
Mind or God is not the author of matter, and the creator of ideas is not the creator of illusions. Thus, according to Christian Science, if God is spirit, life, being, absolute, omnipotent good, be all in all and truth, then the phenomenal universe, including matter and mortal mind, is nothing but an illusion. It does not exist in reality. It has no reality and no existence. Now let us see what the Vedanta philosophers said on this point, centuries before the birth of Christ. In this pre-Christian era, a disciple went to a spiritual master and asked, "Sir, please tell me in a few words the fundamental principles of the Vedanta philosophy." The spiritual master, who was the seer of truth, replied, "I will tell you in half a couplet the fundamental principles of the Vedanta philosophy that have been declared by millions of volumes. Brahman, or the absolute infinite and eternal being, is truth. The world is false or unreal, and the individual soul is no other than Brahman, or the absolute truth, which is absolute existence, intelligence, and bliss. This is the quintessence of Vedanta philosophy. In Christian Science, the word God is used to signify the absolute reality or unchangeable truth of the universe. So in Vedanta philosophy, the Sanskrit word Brahman is used to designate that all-pervading substance of absolute being, which is the reality of the universe. This unchangeable reality of the universe furthermore forms the reality of all living creatures and all mortal things, everything that we can see, hear, or perceive with our senses. If Brahman, or the absolute being, whose nature is absolute existence, intelligence, and bliss, the one reality in all, it must be one, because there cannot be many absolutes or infinites. Absolute must be one, and infinite must be one. As we find this idea in reading Science and Health, so we find it also in the Vedanta philosophy. Granting then that the absolute reality is one, the question naturally presents itself: why do we see great a variety in the phenomenal universe? And what is the cause of this variety?
So this is the ancient problem of understanding these things. Wasn't it Swami Turiyananda that said that Brahman alone is real and all is Brahman? So even the phenomenal world, in some sense, is a manifestation of Brahman, but it's not thought of as having the reality as the absolute Brahman, because it's a temporary reality and it's changeable, and the nature of Brahman is unchangeable. So it gives the nature of the reality, or the nature of the world, a certain level of reality, but and as Shankara himself says, Maya can't be said to be completely unreal or real. It's some peculiar mixture of both. And that's a very hard concept to get across. And so it's interesting to see how he goes through these ideas in this particular lecture where he's comparing it with Christian Science. All right, let's continue.
In answering this question, the Vedanta philosophy gives two theories. The first is the theory of illusion. The second is the theory of evolution. The theory of illusion is very old. We find it formulated in the Vedas, and it was taught by some of the seers of the Vedic period. It was maintained and preached by Buddha, who lived 540 years before Christ, and by his followers. Well, later it was explained with great clearness by Shankaracharya, the best exponent of the Vedanta philosophy, who lived in India in the 7th century after Christ. This theory of illusion is the most difficult of all theories for the ordinary mind to grasp. Even the subtlest logicians and the profoundest thinkers often fail to understand how the phenomenal world, which we perceive with our senses, and which appears so real to us, can be unreal or illusory. If, however, Vedanta philosophy declares the phenomenal universe to be unreal and false, it does not deny its existence, as does Christian Science. It does not say that mortal mind or matter is nothing, but to the contrary, is most careful to define the terms unreal and illusion. By these words, Vedanta philosophy does not mean negation, but phenomenal or relative existence or reality, conditioned by time and space. It admits that this phenomenal world is unreal from the standpoint of the absolute or noumenon. At the same time, it says that it has as much conditional reality in it as anything presented to us by the senses can ever have.
Yes, I remember when I first heard John Dobson's talks, and he puts everything in terms of astronomy and physics and chemistry. And that was very new to the monastery at that time, but not new to Vedanta. I'd grown up here. But I always did find that a difficult concept to understand is the nature of the unreal nature of the universe. How could something that seems so real not be as real as we think it is? And then when you looked at, when John Dobson presented the physics of it, I thought, oh my God, it really is an unreal universe. When you look at the physics, you see that in the quantum realm and in relativity, everything depends on an observer, and that it's an observed universe. And so there's a reality behind it, and it's appearing this way, and the physics, when you go through that, explains all that. We're not going to go through all that physics tonight, but it took him about 10 lectures of 2 hours each, but he started right down at the brass tacks and went forward. But he showed how the infinite, undivided, and unchanging nature of Brahman showed through in the physics as electricity, gravity, and inertia, and that in the quantum realm, the particles existed because we observed them, and we don't know what they're doing. They don't really have a reality if we're not observing them. And so it's an interaction between us and these particles that creates the reality that we see. So in that sense, it became very easy for me to understand that this universe really does have a mysterious apparitional quality to it, which is based on a reality, and yet it's presenting itself like a magic show. And so it was a very useful model for me. All right, so let's go on with the...
Would you like to read a little bit?
You want me to read? Sure. Although Vedanta philosophy agrees with Christian Science in its fundamental principles, yet there is still a great difference between their respective modes of expressing the same truths. Christian Science, by denying the existence of matter and mortal mind, denies the existence of the phenomenal world and reduces it to nothingness. This reminds us of conclusions reached by some of the nihilistic philosophers of India and Europe. Hume denied the existence of mind and matter. He reduced the whole universe to a bundle of sensations, impressions, and ideas. Some of the Buddhist philosophers in India denied the existence of the universe in the same way. But this method creates great confusion in the minds of the people. For instance, I am standing before you and speaking, and you are listening. If we follow the teachings of Christian Science strictly, we shall have to deny that I am standing here and that you are sitting there. In other terms, the speaker is nothing, the hearer is nothing, the mortal mind is nothing. Consequently, thoughts and ideas are nothing. The words expressed by the mortal mind are also nothing. So only this, but not only this, but the very act of denying is nothing, because the act of denying is the act of the mortal mind. It cannot be the act of an absolute or divine mind. Quote, where God is, no other thing can exist. So there cannot be the denial of anything in God. The divine mind cannot see anything outside of itself. And as mortal mind is nothing, therefore the denial itself is nothing. It would be interesting to hear a Christian Science theologian giving a rebuttal to this and trying to explain their position. I think he's perhaps oversimplifying it for the sake of his arguments, but I don't know the details of that enough to comment on it, but I have a feeling they would probably have some sort of an answer. I think he's exaggerating it. Of course, he's taking some things kind of literally and showing the logical consequences of it. This difficulty does not arise in Vedanta philosophy because it does not deny the existence of matter-mind and everything that is on the phenomenal plane. Although it tells us that the world is unreal, that matter is unreal, mind is unreal, still it recognizes their existence, but adds that existence cannot be separated from the absolute existence. If Brahman, or the absolute existence, be all in all, then everything that exists on the phenomenal plane is in reality Brahman, or the absolute truth. The reality of the chair, the table, the earth, the sun, the moon, and the stars is the absolute existence, is divinity itself. The reality in you, in me, and in all living creatures is the same as the absolute reality of the universe. Only on account of names and forms, the one reality appears to be many. As, for instance, the one substance, clay, appears through diverse names and forms in numberless varieties, such as pots, jars, bricks, etc. So the one absolute reality, when clothed with varying names and forms, appears to be the sun, the moon, the stars, animals, vegetables, etc. Matter and mind, according to Vedanta, are not two separate entities, but different expressions of the one eternal substance, which is called Brahman in Vedanta and God in Christian Science. And of course, this would also get across the difficulty of the dualists, like Descartes. The trouble people have with Descartes is that he's got two separate realities and no way for them to interact. There's no way for the realm of the mind to interact with the realm of matter. But from the Vedantic standpoint, since they're both expressions of Brahman, that's how they can interact, is that they're both rooted in Brahman. It's not that they're two separate things. They both are different manifestations from the same reality. And again, it's a temporary reality. It's a somewhat illusory magic show type of reality, but there's still a reality there. When you're watching a magic show, there's an actual magician there and an actual thing happening, and you actually see things happening. But your interpretation of those things is faulty, and so it looks like he's doing things or she's doing things that they're not doing. And so this reality is like that. We're seeing all this diversity, and we fail to see the oneness behind the variety, and that's the problem. Do you feel like another turn of reading?
No,
All right.
Yeah. I just lost my place.
Instead of
insistently denying the existence of matter, mortal mind, and objective phenomena, Vedanta tells us how to see through the multiplicity of names and forms, the one unchangeable being, which stands as the background of all objects of material existence and gives reality to all. The names and forms have, of course, no absolute reality, but they have conditional reality, or in other words, they exist in relation to our minds. The world is real according to Vedanta, but at the same time it is not as it seems to be. It is not that which appears to us at the present moment. This is what is meant by illusion in Vedanta. For example, here is a chair. The substance of the chair is the absolute reality, because the absolute reality is all-pervading in one. It is in you, in me, in the table, and in everything. And that which gives reality to the chair is one with the absolute reality. But the chair appears as chair only so long as it is clothed with the name and form of chair. If we can mentally separate the name and form from the substance of the chair, that which will be left will be common wood. Take away the name and form of wood, atoms and molecules will remain. Take away the name and form of atoms and molecules, there will be left nothing but eternal energy, and that is inseparable from the absolute substance. In this way, if we can mentally separate the names and forms from the substance, all phenomenal objects can be reduced to one substance, which is the absolute reality of the universe.
Yeah, my simplistic understanding of the Christian Science ideas is that if you can completely assert your identity with God and your divine nature, that you are made in the image of God, and that your body, mind, and spirit are all made in the image of God, that will bring about the healing. You create your divine, pure, perfect self. And so that's my simplistic idea of how the Christian Scientists view this. So, but I guess from a philosophical point, he's got some interesting ideas about this. All right, let's go on. He'll give some more ideas here.
Thus, Vedanta, while giving the most logical reason for the variety of phenomena, does not deny the existence of anything. On the contrary, it tells us that the real existence, or true substance of everything, is Brahman, or absolute reality, or God, as Christian Science calls it. The whole universe is like one infinite ocean of reality, which is nameless and formless. And in that ocean, waves and bubbles rise spontaneously and take different names and forms. These waves and bubbles are the objects of the phenomenal universe. As in the ocean, waves and bubbles have no existence separate from or independent of the ocean itself. So the waves and bubbles, known as the phenomenal objects of the universe, have no existence separate from or independent of the ocean of reality. We are like so many bubbles in the infinite ocean of reality.
Well, that's that's a footnote. The English translation of Maya is not illusion, but is delusion or nations. Okay, then the rest of the paragraph.
Our existence to that ocean, live there and play for a while, then merge into it to reappear in some other form. Such is the conception of Vedanta concerning the relation of phenomena to the absolute noumenon, or the unchangeable truth, which underlies all phenomenal names and forms. Christian Science, taking its stand on the Bible, tries to defend its position by wonderfully clever interpretations of scriptural passages in which the meaning of each passage is stretched to its utmost limit. Common sense, however, prevents many from accepting such interpretations, as they depend neither upon logic nor upon reason, but upon the authority of an inspired founder.
And of course, as we mentioned earlier, she did this because that was the audience she was speaking to. She wasn't addressing an audience that was going to be versed in the Bhagavad Gita or the Upanishads or other esoteric philosophies. She had to justify passages from the Bible. And also, one could argue that there were many things in the Bible that were twisted in a particular way, and if you read in between the lines, you can find deeper meanings that perhaps were there in the beginning, but were kind of edited out. We know that there are many apocryphal gospels, and again, we don't know how authentic all of those are, but somebody wrote them and were inspired by Christ's teachings. And so they may very well be from people that knew Christ directly and were passed down their teachings. And some of them are much more Vedantic than the four canonical gospels are, indicating that perhaps to some of his more intimate disciples, he revealed ideas and truths of a more esoteric nature that might have been more difficult for his generally Jewish audience to accept. You have to realize that teachers teach to a particular audience, and Jesus was teaching primarily to a Jewish audience, and Mary Baker Eddy was preaching primarily to a Christian audience. And so they have to put things in terms that those people are going to understand. And they can't expect them to go through a university course for a degree in philosophy to understand things in a more specific way. All right, so Now I've lost the place. Let's see, where are we? Oh yeah, Vedanta, yeah, inspired founder. Okay. Yeah, not upon the logic of an authority of the inspired founder. Vedanta philosophy explains. Find it?
Vedanta philosophy explains the same truths without resting its evidence upon any book or upon the authority of any man or woman, whether of antiquity or of our day. It has no founder, consequently it does not demand allegiance to anyone or to anything save truth. Christian Science, again, by denying the phenomenal universe, places itself at variance with all science and all philosophy. It also defies all modern scientific methods by restricting its field of investigation to that which is mentioned in the one copyrighted volume called Science and Health, whereas the Vedanta philosophy, admitting the existence and relative reality of the phenomenal universe of mind and matter, accepts all the truths that have been discovered by science and philosophy, or by the seers of truth in all countries and in all ages.
Yeah, again, I never got that impression that they were anti-science at all. I never got that impression from the particular services that I attended back then, but I don't know where he's getting that particular impression. All right, let's continue.
At the same time, it tells us that the realm of science and philosophy lies within the limits of time and space, that they cannot, in consequence, go beyond relative reality.
Well, that goes for anything we say. Anything we're putting into words is automatically in the realm of time, space, and causation, and in the space of relative existence. So that really goes without saying. All right.
Christian Science does not see any harmony between absolute truth and the scientific truths discovered by so-called mortal mind. But Vedanta, on the contrary, sees perfect harmony underlying all the laws and phases of truth which human minds have discovered. Truth being one, whether it be discovered by science, philosophy, or religion, is the same truth. It cannot be many. Why should we deny its diverse aspects as long as we are on the phenomenal plane? Christian Science, to go further, is notably uncharitable towards everything not sanctioned by its founder, while Vedanta philosophy declares that truth is universal and cannot be monopolized by any man or woman of any country.
Yeah, again, I remember one of the people in the Christian Science church where I played said that Christian scientists don't claim to have a monopoly on truth. So ideas have changed, or perhaps the particular Christian scientists he was talking to had these ideas, but perhaps it's not universally held that way. Okay.
Christian Science rejects the doctrine of evolution and upholds the belief in special creation as described in the book of Genesis, attempting to explain the account there given by the idealistic theory, which was adopted by Bishop Berkeley and by a host of other idealists of ancient and modern times. Vedanta accepts the doctrine of evolution and shows that of special creation to be absurd. It also courts free investigation in the realm of nature without imposing the condition the results of all such investigations be in accord with the tenets of a specific book or of some one teacher, and it thus emancipates the human soul from bondage to any one of scriptures or to personal authority.
Of course, that was a raging debate back then, so perhaps she did have those ideas that of a more of a fundamentalist Christian idea of the creation of the universe coming literally the way it was in the Bible, but that would be part of the air of matter, you see. So there would be sort of a difference there. All right.
In this age of agnosticism and materialism, Christian Science has done an admirable work in making people realize that this phenomenal world of ours is like a dreamland, and that all objects of sense are nothing more than objects seen in a dream. This is no small gain for Western minds, because the more we realize that this world is like a dream, the nearer we approach to absolute truth. In this respect, what Christian Science is at present trying to do in this country has been done by Vedanta in India for centuries. Furthermore, Christian Science has rendered a great service to humanity by demonstrating the power of the mind over the body, the power of spirit over matter. Although this fact was in no way new to the spiritual teachers, sages, and best thinkers of every country, still in no other country and at no other time had there ever been so well organized a movement as that recently started by Mrs. Eddy under the name of Christian Science. Like Vedanta has brought health to many diseased bodies and rest to many diseased minds. Dazzled, however, by their wonderful success in healing, Christian Science does lay exclusive claim to the method of healing given by Mrs. Eddy, declaring it to be the only right method, while all others adopted by mental scientists, metaphysical healers, and other kindred sects are wrong and unscientific. We must not, however, let these extravagant claims I make by the over-enthusiastic followers of Mrs. Eddy blind us to the fact that the power of healing is the property of every individual soul. Anyone can develop the gift of healing and cure disease by the mind without becoming a Christian Scientist and without reading a page of Science and Health.
Yes. So it's interesting. I remember the story of the founder or the rediscoverer of the Reiki technique also talked about how he had read that Christ had healed and that Buddha had healed and was wondering how they did it, figured they had a method and searched for the method and finally rediscovered the Reiki healing energy technique. So it was kind of interesting that he was aware that this healing power existed with Buddha as well as with Christ. And he's going to point out that there have been many remarkable healers. You want me to read a minute?
It's about time to stop.
Almost, but we got a couple minutes. There have been many remarkable healers in every country, which, such as among the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Mohammedans, and those of other religious creeds, it is a great mistake to think that the power of healing comes from any outside source or from belief in this or that. It is developed by living a right life in accordance with moral and spiritual laws of nature. Christian Science teaches that the power of healing was first shown to the world by Jesus the Christ and his disciples, and asserts that no one ever manifested that kind of healing power before he appeared upon the earth. But if we read the religious history of the world carefully, we find that long before the birth of Christ, the same healing power of mind or spirit was practiced by the followers of Buddha with marvelous success. Wherever Buddhist missionaries traveled, they healed the sick without using drugs. The yogis in India used no drug in curing diseases, but rely entirely upon the spiritual power which they acquired through the right living and practice of yoga. Christian Science, in laying such stress upon the miraculous and exclusive power of healing manifested by Jesus, are evidently ignorant of the fact that similar Christ-like healing powers were displayed by the Asclepius, the ancient Greek who was proclaimed the savior of mankind because of these very powers. He not only cured the sick of the most malignant diseases, but even raised the dead. Eusebius, I'm not very good at pronouncing these strange names, the ecclesiastical historian, wrote in glowing terms of the gift of healing possessed by him for many years after his death. Furthermore, miracles continued to be wrought through the efficacy of faith in his name. Christ-like healing powers again were shown and miraculously performed by Apollonius of Tyana, who was a contemporary of Jesus of Nazareth. The lives of Hindu sages, Buddhist monks, and the yogis of India are filled with such descriptions of miraculous cures, and even of the raising of the dead. Vedanta philosophy, being fully cognizant of these facts, cannot therefore admit that Christian scientists, that Jesus was the first to exercise this power. On the contrary, it teaches that the power of healing is universal and cannot be confined within the boundaries of any one creed, sect, religion, or book. And of course, there's also a bit of we tend to, when people start something new, they tend to exaggerate exclusive claims to those things in order to get followers. So that's a very common phenomenon. But when you look at the overall history of things, you realize that yes, that many times through all parts of the world. I mean, if you go into the African subcontinent and the South American subcontinent, and you look at the various shamanic traditions and so forth, there are many different versions of healing, and these healing powers are brought out in various ways. And so what Christian Science does is it brings out these healing powers by emphasizing the teachings of Christ and identifying yourself with the truth of Christ. And so other methods of healing do it in slightly different ways, but the healing power is there, and you just have to have a particular way to access it. So that I don't think that detracts from the truth or the efficacy of any one way of doing it. It's just that it recognizes that there are many ways to do it, whereas each one might tell you that their way's the best way or the only way. So that's fairly typical among human endeavors, is that we tend to want to get followers and have people have a more absolute faith. Sometimes people, in order to develop a more one-pointedness, need that kind of exclusive feeling in order to keep their minds more one-pointed. But anyway, I want to wish you a very happy Bengali New Year, and of course, last week was New Year for many other states in India, and a very blessed Good Friday to you, and looking forward, a blessed Easter on Sunday. All of these things, including the spring equinox, of course, are celebrating renewal of life and regeneration, beginning of new cycles and so forth. So they all have that kind of commonality to them. And so it's a wonderful time to celebrate that. Spring in the northern hemisphere, everything is coming to life. The trees are budding out and the blossoms are coming forth. So it's a beautiful time to remember that renewal of life that comes around each cycle of the year. All right, let's close with a chant. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Om, peace, peace, peace. Oh, and one last reminder, Hanuman Jayanti tomorrow. So join us in the afternoon. I think it starts at 2 or 2:30, I can't remember, 2. And we'll be doing many Hanuman Chalisas throughout the afternoon, ending with a talk by Swami Abhedananda on Hanuman. So join us for that lovely celebration. All right, thank you.